Welcome back, everyone, to Evolution versus Creation, and we're going to go through a couple things in this video, being body parts and DNA, and I'm really going to switch gears about halfway through, but it'll seem random, but there is a connection, and I'll show you what that connection is when we get to it. But we're going to first look at vestigial body parts. And so what that means, what vestigial body parts means, is that it's the belief that there's a bunch of things in our body that are left over from evolution or are in the process of evolving, and they serve no function in the body, which is why they believe it's either left over from evolution or beginning something new in evolution. And so, to be honest, the evolutionist track record regarding these alleged vestigial body parts do not inspire confidence. And so there was the famous Scope trials of 1925, where evolutionists claimed that there was no less than at least 180 vestigial structures in the human body. Since that time, functions for essentially all of these have been discovered, including important known functions for things like the tonsils and appendix. So the tonsils and appendix were believed to be some of these vestigial body parts, and meaning they had no use. And that has been shown through biology and through scientific study that that's absolutely not the case. They all serve a purpose. Yet evolutionists have continued to hinder science by declaring various body parts to be useless or vestigial. Junk DNA was a great example of that, and junk DNA was something they thought was left over from evolution, but through, again, scientific discovery, they found that junk DNA was not junk at all. In fact, it was something amazing that our body was using. And so something like junk DNA is another example of how science was kind of led astray in believing that there's things in our body that serve no purpose any longer, and it's just simply not true. So this reoccurring pattern of disproved claims is one of the reasons why many scientists have advised evolutionists to avoid calling anything vestigial, because they have such a bad track record with it. One of the more famous ones, that is this one you'll still find in our textbooks today, is that the tailbone, and the word for that is the coccyx, is useless. It's actually left over from the evolution of monkey to man, and so it's what's remaining of the tail. And if it's not remaining, what's remaining from a tail, then they believe that it's actually evolving into something else. And so these are really the only two options we have in our textbooks, that it's either left over from evolution or it's evolving into something else, because they believe that it has no given function. And so this has been proven to be absolutely false. The coccyx was widely thought to have no function in humans, but it's now understood that the coccyx provides a base of support for sitting and a place of attachment for various muscles, tendons, and ligaments, including the large gluteus maximus, which is the buttocks. Isn't that a fancy way to say the buttocks? The gluteus maximus. I thought that was kind of funny. Muscles that support the pelvic floor and the anus, which play a role in defecation. So altogether, it is used to anchor 9 different muscles. And according to doctors, it is something that you would not want to live without, which was taken from the University of California, published January 25th, 2016. The tailbone being vestigial is no longer accurate. It has been proven to be absolutely false. And so, again, guys, we just see this common problem in our education system, where in textbooks, they'll only give you 2 options for why we have a tailbone. Either it's left over from evolution or it's evolving into something else. And the truth is, it's ridiculous to think either, because it's been proven to show that it's something our bodies absolutely need. And as the doctors say, it is not something that you would want to live without. And so even when you go to the American Museum of Natural History in New York, for example, you'll see that they have on display the tailbone serves no purpose and is left over from evolution. And so that's something that they have on their display at the American Museum of Natural History. And some scientists from the creation.com website have sent out a statement that says this. They said, given how simple it is to prove the notion that the coccyx serves no purpose, it is disturbing to see that this claim that it does serve no purpose is on display at a prominent educational institution where the public is being misled. The coccyx clearly makes a useful contribution to the proper functioning of the body. Therefore, we call on the American Museum of Natural History to correct their exhibit, and we earnestly hope that the museum curators will honor the truth even if it comes at Darwin's expense. And so I just wanted to show you guys that just real quickly, that the vestigial body parts that they've said have all been proven to be false. We use everything in our body. There's nothing in our body that doesn't have a purpose, and that has been proven through science and the medical field and biology. And so there is no such thing as vestigial body parts. Doesn't matter what it says in your textbooks. In the real world, they have been proven to be false. We use everything that we have in our bodies. So now we're going to take a really simple look at DNA. I'm not even going to get into this in depth, but the more in depth you get into DNA, the more you realize that this DNA is so incredible, and the information that's been engineered in DNA is mind-blowing. It's absolutely mind-blowing. You know, in the 18th and 19th and 20th century, you know, I understand some of the science that led people away from believing in creation. I get some of it when you go off Darwin's theories. But living in the 21st century, with more discoveries that we have made, are definitely making this journey back to intelligent design with discoveries that have been made, including some of the things that have been found in the 21st century in DNA. And so it is just this incredible thing that, if I could be really honest, you almost have to be in incredible denial not to believe that this has intelligence behind it. I'm just going to say it straight. To believe that this could just come into being by random chance is amazing to me, that you could believe that. It requires an amount of faith that I will never, ever have. And in fact, I would say it's even beyond faith. It's just... it's being stubborn. If I could be honest, you're just being stubborn. We've been created, and DNA screams that. And so just simply, if you were to unwind and link together this a strand of DNA in one of your cells, it would be 6 feet long. So with 100 trillion cells in your body, that means if all your DNA were put end to end, it would stretch 67 billion miles. 67 billion miles. That's 150,000 round trips from the Earth to the moon. 150,000 round trips from the Earth to the moon inside of your body. That's how much DNA is inside of you. So our DNA is an incredibly complex system that requires 3 things to function. And I want to hone in on these because it's really important what this reveals to us. Number 1, it needs a language. You cannot have a communication system without a language because there are senders and receivers in the cell. So it has a language. Number 2, you need that communication network or channels for this language. And if I could compare it to something, it's similar to hardware that enables the internet. So you got language, then you got communication networks for that language, and then thirdly, you have to have meaningful information that is translated into a language and then communicated through the channels of communication. So information, communication, and language are all non-material entities and can only arise through intelligence, and they are all mutually defining. Meaning, you can't have one without the other. They all have to arise at the exact same time, making the theory of their evolution impossible. These things a language couldn't evolve into a communication network, or a communication network into meaningful information. It all has to arrive at the same time. It's known as being mutually defining. They have to be there at once. Randomness and chance would never be capable of producing this incredibly complex system that is full of information, communication networks, and meaningful information inside of your body. To put it another way, if anyone saw this 7-letter word written in sand on a beach, they would know that somebody or something with intelligence wrote it. No one would ever believe that it happened by random acts of who knows what. And this is the same with the picture on the right, even more so. We see here a language communicating meaningful information, and we know that there is intelligence behind it. That did not happen by chance. And so that's exactly what we're seeing in our DNA, except to a way larger amount and with way more information. And so even something as simple as seeing words written on the beach, we obviously know somebody wrote it. And it's even more so within our DNA. So if you look at it, we have 3.5 billion letters of genetic alphabet in exactly the right order, which uses language to communicate meaningful information. And some people believe this all came about by random chance. It's honestly just not possible. And so thinking of it in a simple and logical way, the discovery of DNA alone should honestly put an end to the evolutionary theory. There is no way that DNA just happened to randomly come about. It is way too complex, and everywhere else where we see language, communication, and meaningful language, or meaningful information, everywhere else we see that, there's always intelligence behind it. And it's the same with DNA. There is intelligence behind it. Your body is made from 10 trillion cells, and about 12 billion of these cells are linked by more than 10 trillion connections. The cells form several whole systems, all of which are made of many subsystems. Every cell is like a city in complexity, with nanomachines operating automatically all the time. Darwinists claim that all these things came about by accident. It would be like if we looked into space and we saw an incredibly complex city that was running with machinery and stuff. And we just thought, oh wow, look at that planet. They got a city on there. That must have just come about by random chance. There's no aliens there. There's no intelligent design there. That was just random. Well, this is happening in your body, except there's trillions of them. Inside of you, there's trillions of these little cities and factories and machines working night and day inside of you with incredible complexity. And there is no way that those things could come about by random chance without intelligence driving it. It's honestly completely illogical and unscientific to believe that. Here's a cool picture I wanted to show you. With our DNA. So on the left side is the famous stained glass window of St. Peter in New York. On the right is a 3D picture of your DNA. Notice the beauty and symmetry of both designs. Look at that. Isn't that amazing? You're telling me that picture on the right just came about by chance? And then look at the stained glass on the left. It's like we've been made to be like our Creator and to create things like He has created. He's given us that ability. We're made in His image. And it's just amazing to me that these two pictures look so similar. One's made by God and one's made by man, who's made in His image. And I just think that's really neat. Look at the symmetry, guys. You can't have a painting without a painter, nor a book without an author, or a garden without a gardener. You can't have a song without a composer, nor pottery without a potter. And yet, when we look all around us, the greatest of all these has left his undeniable fingerprints everywhere for us to see. Look at the symmetry in these flowers. Look at the colors of them. And here too, even in a fallen world, we are surrounded by perfect designs that simply require a designer. And if we'll just slow down enough to look around, creation is amazing, which is why, again, Romans 1:20 says that since the creation of the world, His eternal attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, so that we are without excuse. His fingerprints are everywhere, friends, and it's just amazing to me. And I don't know how you could see these kinds of things and observe them and believe that there is zero intelligence driving the creation of these things, that these things all just happened by random chance. And that's why I believe with what we know in science and what we can just even see with our own eyes, it takes far more faith to believe in evolution than it does creation. Far more faith. And like I've said in many times in many videos, I will never have that much faith. I just won't. It defies logic. And so human DNA contains more organized information than the encyclopedia. If the full text of the encyclopedia were to arrive in computer code from outer space, most people would regard this as proof of the existence of extraterrestrial intelligence. However, when we see it in nature, it is explained as the workings of random forces. That's exactly what we have in our DNA. We have discovered something that is more organized and more complex and has more information than an encyclopedia inside of our bodies. And so again, we would never think that that happened by chance if we found that on let's say the moon or Mars. If we found something like an encyclopedia, we would know there is intelligence behind it. So how is it that we argue there's not when we find it inside of our bodies? That's why there's not consistency in this theory when it comes to evolution. It goes against what's logical and what we would do in other circumstances if we were to find it elsewhere, like on other planets. We would have a very, very different narrative. And yet when it's inside of our bodies, it's all of a sudden, well, that's just random. Wouldn't be random anywhere else, so why would you think it's random in your body? And I wanted to quote Louis Pasteur, who is the founder of microbiology and immunology. And he said, "A little science distances you from God, but a lot of science brings you nearer to him." And I think that's very well said. So now we're just going to take a quick look at genetic entropy. So this is the degradation of the information in our DNA over time. And so it's also a well-known issue for evolution. So this widely known problem simply means that bad mutations increase in the human genome. Every time the cell divides, there are increasing mutations that take place per cell inside of our body. In the first division, we have 3 mutations per cell and 6 total. In the second division, we have 6 mutations per cell and 24 total. This constant division and mutation is actually the reason that we die. This is also the reason we get old and the body begins to break down because of this mutation process. After continuous cell division, a 60-year-old person has up to 40,000 mutations per skin cell. Total mutations number in the trillions, and yet the problem gets bigger. We transfer a certain amount of these mutations to our children. Every generation increasingly adds to the amount of mutations passed on. So first generation, 100 additional mutations, second, 200, third, 300, and so forth and so on. And so our genome is breaking down and wearing out over time. We're actually getting worse over time, not better. And so what we've observed is the human race is degenerating and the human genome is rusting out like an old car. Evolution teaches that we are getting better over time, yet genetic entropy has actually taught us that if anything, we are devolving and getting worse over time. And so again, this just goes against the narrative that we've often heard. And so genetic entropy, which I've just given you a very, very elementary snapshot of it, but what it has revealed to us is the opposite of what we would expect if evolution was true. And so now I'm gonna appear to really switch gears here, and I am switching gears, but there is a connection, and that is that when we go back in time and we see ancient civilizations, they should be like nowhere near as smart as us, because according to evolution, we're getting smarter and smarter. But when we go back and we look at the most ancient civilizations in the world, we find intelligence that is mind-blowing and still to this day cannot be explained. And so I do want to explore some of these discoveries with you. Well, number one, because they're really interesting, but number two, because it doesn't make sense if evolution is true and we're getting smarter and smarter. Some of the things that we have discovered from the most ancient civilizations known to man are like I've said, mind-blowing in their intelligence. So here's where we're going to switch gears. So the oldest civilization in human history is only 5,000 years old. That's also really interesting to me. It's only 5,000 years old. And not only that, but it appears to come out of absolutely nowhere. It's the Sumerians. That's the oldest civilization known to mankind. And so they're from the Mesopotamia area from 3000 BC. So again, 5,000 years old. And it was a flourishing urban civilization. This is one of the buildings that they built that's still standing today, 5,000 years old. So several ancient civilizations across the world show an advanced level of astronomy, science, architecture, and mathematics that defy what humans should have been able to accomplish at this time. And I'm not saying should have been able to accomplish at this time because of evolution, because in the evolutionary theory, 5,000 years is absolutely nothing. It's not very long at all. But I mean more for what we've learned in our history books of where people should have been at this time. They should have not had very much ability or tools to build the things that they did. And so again, these civilizations appear to come out of nowhere and have become very difficult to explain given the current narrative that we have regarding human history. So one of the structures I want to show you, an ancient structure, is the Pyramid of Giza, and it's known as the oldest of the 7 wonders of the world. And its complexity and incredible astronomical alignments defy what can be explained still to this day. The intelligent design and construction are impossible to explain given the age in which it was built and what limited tools believed to have been available at this time. And so, again, guys, we're seeing something ancient that this would be so difficult to build today. We could do it with modern machinery, of course, but it would be incredibly difficult. And so the further back we go into ancient civilizations, it's almost like the more complex they become. Not simple, but the more complex. And so I want to go over a few of the known facts about this pyramid because to me, it's just fascinating. So each stone block in this pyramid weighs between 2 and 30 tons, with some as heavy as 50 tons. And for those of you who don't know, 1 ton is just over 2,200 pounds or 1,000 kilograms. So to put this into perspective, a big elephant weighs 5 tons, which means the biggest block would have been as heavy as 10 good-sized elephants. And on top of that, many of these stones came from over 900 kilometers away. That's like moving them from Vancouver, BC to Calgary, Alberta. Or for those of you in the States, it's like going from San Francisco, California to Las Vegas, Nevada. That's how far away they moved these 2 to 30 ton stones. No idea how they did it. I mean, there's a few theories out there, but it's just incredible what they did. And the mortar that they used to build these pyramids is of unknown origin. It has been analyzed and its chemical composition is known, but it can't be reproduced. It is stronger than stone and still holding up to this day. How these blocks were transported and assembled into the pyramid is still a great mystery. It was originally covered with casing stones, which is made of highly polished limestone. These casing stones reflected the sun's light and made the pyramid shine like a jewel. It has been calculated that the original pyramid with its casing stones would act like gigantic mirrors and reflect light so powerful that it would be visible from the moon as a shining star on the earth. Appropriately, the ancient Egyptians called the Great Pyramid Ekhet, meaning the glorious light. And this is another amazing thing, that how they figured this out and how they did this is an insane mystery. The centers of the 4 sides are indented with an extraordinary degree of precision, forming the only 8-sided pyramid that we know of. This effect, however, is not visible from the ground or from a distance, but only from the air, and then only under the proper lighting conditions. This phenomenon is only detectable from the air at dawn and sunset on the spring and autumn equinoxes, when the sun casts shadows on the pyramid. And again, it makes you wonder how they would have gotten high enough in the air to get the proper view during construction. It's not like they could go up there in a plane or a chopper and check out what they're doing. This is in the middle of the desert. There's no way of getting up there. And yet, they did it with incredible precision. The Great Pyramid is the most accurately aligned structure in existence and faces true north with only 3/60ths or 0.05 degree of error. This is an incredible structure that absolutely defies what should be possible for people of this age to be able to build. The granite coffer inside the king's chamber of this pyramid is too big to fit through the passages, and so it must have been put in place during construction. The coffer was made out of a block of solid granite. This would have required bronze saws 8 to 9 feet long, set with teeth of sapphires. Hollowing out of the interior would require tubular drills of the same material applied with tremendous vertical force. Microscopic analysis of the coffer reveals that it was made with a fixed point drill that used hard jewel bits and a drilling force of 2 tons, or over 4,000 pounds. However, according to many of our history books, this was all done with rock, hammers, chisels, and picks. Again, guys, do you see the problem with so much of the narrative that we've always been fed our whole lives? When we actually look into this stuff, there is a different story going on than what we've always been told. The things that we have observed of one of the most ancient civilizations on the planet, what they were able to accomplish should be impossible. Impossible. It'd be hard to do today, let alone way back then when, like I said, they are believed to only have had rock hammers, chisels, and picks and some deer antlers. So there's a different narrative here, again, that's revealing how intelligent these people really were. The southern shaft in the king's chamber pointed to the star that is a star in the constellation Orion. And in 2450 BC, the Orion constellation was associated with the Egyptian god Osiris. No other star aligned with this shaft during that time in history. And so it's just showing you their understanding of astronomy was absolutely incredible, and their ability to build something on Earth to align with those things was just incredible in the precision that they did it with. And again, never being able to go above the pyramid to see what it looked like it being 8-sided, like it showed you in the other slide. They could have never seen that. Like, nobody would have ever actually been able to see that, because you have to observe it from way above, and yet they were able to do that. It's incredible, the architectural design behind this pyramid. And the relationship between pi and phi is expressed in the fundamental proportions of the Great Pyramid. And yet this is something that shouldn't be discovered for another 2,000 years. These people were brilliant. Next, we find a very impressive 3-leveled underground temple built roughly 5,000 years ago on the island of Malta in the Mediterranean Sea, and it's called the Hypogeum of Hal Safini. It was discovered by accident in 1902 by workers as they were cutting cisterns for a new housing development, and ended up breaking through the temple's roof. There are 4 things about this place that I just think are really interesting. Number 1 is that at least 7,000 skeletons were found clustered near the entrance of the temple. And I just think that's interesting. It doesn't really have anything to do with what we're talking about, but I just wanted to throw it in there because it's kind of creepy. It's like, what happened to those people? 7,000 people. That's a lot of people, and they're all clustered near the entrance of the temple. Don't know what happened to them, but it's kind of weird. Second, the entire structure is carved out of limestone. The whole thing. But according to our history books at this time period, they should have only had tools like antlers, flint, and rock to do this. And yet this whole thing is carved out of limestone in the side of this mountain, or the side of this hill. It's just incredible. Third, on the mid-level is a room called the Holy of Holies, and it is oriented towards the winter solstice. The original opening of the temple would have reflected the light over 19 feet down, and it would have illuminated the front of this room. An incredibly complicated architectural feat, especially for people that were supposed to be, from 5,000 years ago and only using what we've been told they had to use. And so, again, their knowledge and their understanding and their ability to do this is just incredible. It shouldn't be possible from what we've been told, and yet they did it. And here's the 4th one is the most interesting. This one's quite fascinating. So the strangest of all is the knowledge of acoustics that these people had, and it honestly is still baffling scientists to this very day. So here's what happens. When a male, it has to be a male, stands in what has been called the oracle room and speaks, the sound reverberates through the whole complex. However, the effect only works if speaking from the 95 to 120 hertz range, which is why most female voices would not work here. Even more strangely, if you're a man chanting at 110 hertz exactly, the whole temple complex turns into a trance-inducing experience that seems to stimulate the creative center of the brain. Kid you not. It's not bad for a group of people who lived just before the Bronze Age and supposedly had recently just learned how to farm. Again, guys, there is incredible intelligence here, and I believe that these people were way smarter than we are today. Traveling west into South America, going into Bolivia and Peru, we find even more unexplained rock fortresses and temples. And guys, these are found all over the world. The further back we go, the more complex they get. And this one here is one of these sites, and it is similar both in stone size and masonry precision as the Egyptian pyramids. Look at the size of these stones. One of these stones has been measured by archaeologists to be 29 feet high and over 360 tons. That's roughly equivalent to 500 cars. That's how much this rock weighed, a single rock. What's even more impressive is the fact that the stone is not even on the base level, which means it would have to have been lifted into place, like lifting 500 cars at once into place. Like other locations that we have looked at, these rocks were cut from a mountain over 15 kilometers away and brought here. Like, what? They are also so perfectly cut and fit together that not even a single piece of paper can fit between the joints, and this was done without the use of any mortar. They didn't use any mortar for these rocks, guys. And upon looking into these more, archaeologists had said it even looks as if it was cut with a laser. It's so precise and fits so perfectly. They don't understand how they did it. It's so precise. It looks like it was cut with a laser. And so in an area riddled with earthquakes for a few thousand years, these impressive structures still stand today as a result of their brilliant engineering and strength. And again, guys, according to our history books, at this time period, these walls were found to be constructed. The invention of the wheel should not have even taken place yet. We shouldn't even have a wheel yet. And yet we have these incredible megalithic structures that are insanely precise in how they're built together, and they're still standing today. What's interesting too is we go back and we think of the Aztecs and the Incas when we think about South America, but there are records that the Incas claim that these walls were already built when they arrived. And you can actually see that in their construction, because you can see the work that was done by the Incas that is much, much less talented masonry work compared to the ones that were done before. And so you can see these beautifully carved, lasered, whatever you want to call it, stones that are massive and incredibly fit together. And then you have the Incas who built on top of it, which is kind of the sloppier, smaller rocks. So the Inca work is above, and whoever was there before is underneath. Here's just another picture where you can see the Incas filling in that gap there with their stonework, and whoever came before them doing their incredible masonry work. We've not seen anything like this. Like even today, like these things would have to be brilliantly engineered and cut with lasers. And I mean, even today we would use mortar, right? They're not even using mortar here. What they've built is better than what we've built today. Here's another one. Look at the size of these rocks. They're just impressive. So again, notice the difference in masonry work between the bottom few layers and the added ones later. The added ones later. It's just amazing. So zooming out from some of these walls, we see that these structures do not just consist of massive walls, but also the remains of a fortress, a temple, and a huge tower. The temple was called the Temple of the Sun. And pictured below is what used to be the top of a mountain. And so whoever built this site completely removed the top of the mountain and built this structure on top. If this was done today, it would require a lot of dynamite and a lot of heavy machinery. And yet this is thousands and thousands of years old. And it's just, guys, it's just incredible what these people built. And here's an aerial picture of the remains of the tower that once stood here. And so again, the architecture and geometrical features are mind-blowing. And when the Spanish invaders first saw this complex, they actually considered it to be greater than the 7 wonders of the world known at that time. And so I wanted to include this, guys, because it's really interesting that, again, the further back we go into ancient civilization, the more intelligent we find people to be. And this stuff can't even be explained to this day. There's been all kinds of different theories, but it ends up more often than not being absolute head scratchers. How did these people pull that off? And so I just wanted to include this because I know it's another angle on this topic, but again, we see what we would expect to see because of what we understand through genetic entropy. And so, yeah, it's just fascinating. The most ancient cultures seem to be the most advanced. And so I wanted to include that. So anyways, guys, we're almost done. I got one more video to go after this, and that is going to be a wrap on evolution versus creation. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one.